The small blue fingers of Ilara trembled as she pressed the communication panel. Around her, the metal walls of the scientific outpost hummed with eerie quiet. Just 3 days ago, these corridors had been filled with the sounds of her people, adult Zalathians going about their work, studying the strange new world they had found. Now everyone was gone. "Please," she whispered, her large purple eyes blinking away tears as she recorded her message. "My name is Ilara. I am alone. Everyone is sleeping forever. Bad people came. They let out something that made everyone sick. Please help me." The young Zalathian child, no more than what humans would consider 8 years old, had watched from her hiding spot in the ventilation system as raiders attacked the outpost. They wore strange masks and released canisters of glowing green mist before taking all the valuable research equipment. Within hours, the adults began coughing, their blue skin turning pale. By the next morning, Ilara found herself completely alone. She knew enough about the communication system to send out a distress call. What she didn't know was that her desperate plea was traveling across vast distances of space, bouncing from one relay station to another. The message reached the Valkyrie Empire first. Their communications officer listened for exactly 10 seconds before cutting the transmission. "Pathogen outbreak at Research Outpost 7 Delta in the Andromeda sector," the officer reported to his superior. "Zalathian colony, 1 survivor, a child." The commander's expression didn't change. "Quarantine protocols are clear. Mark the sector as contaminated. No response authorized." The same scene repeated itself across dozens of civilizations. The Praxian Confederation, renowned for their medical knowledge, calculated the risk and decided it was too high. The Zith Collective, famous for their rescue operations, determined that 1 child wasn't worth the potential spread of a deadly disease. The Orlan Republic simply deleted the message without listening to it completely. Meanwhile, at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station in Daejeon, South Korea, a tired technician named Taiho was finishing his night shift. He almost missed the faint signal that appeared on his screen. "What's this?" he muttered, adjusting his equipment to boost the weak transmission. The language was strange, clicking sounds mixed with high-pitched tones, but the translation program managed to catch pieces of it. "Alone, everyone are sleeping forever. Help me." Taiho straightened in his chair. Something about the voice struck him, a quality that transcended species. Fear, loneliness, the unmistakable sound of a frightened child. He quickly sent the recording to his supervisor, who passed it up the chain of command. Within hours, it reached the desk of Captain Jiwoo Park aboard the exploratory vessel Horizon, currently the closest human ship to the Andromeda sector. Captain Park played the message 3 times. Her crew watched in silence as she paced the bridge of their ship, her short black hair neatly framing a face etched with concern. "Navigation Officer Junho, how long would it take us to reach these coordinates?" she asked. The young officer checked his instruments. 4 days at maximum speed, Captain." "That's a restricted sector," warned First Officer Doyun, his voice stern. "Diplomatic protocols clearly state we need permission from the Galactic Conclave before entering Zalathian space." Captain Park nodded. "I understand the protocols, Doyun. Request emergency clearance from Earth Command." 3 hours later, the answer came back. Permission denied. The risk was too great. The Horizon was to maintain its current mission and avoid the Andromeda sector entirely. That night, Captain Park sat alone in her quarters, the alien child's message playing softly. She thought of her own niece back on Earth, about the same age as this Zalathian child seemed to be. The next morning, she called her senior officers to the conference room. Medical Officer Subin, Security Chief Yunji, and engineers Jae-hyun and Minji joined Do-hyun and Junho around the table. "I've called you here because I'm going to make a decision that could end all our careers," Park said simply. "I intend to ignore our orders and respond to that distress call." A heavy silence fell over the room. That would be against direct orders, Captain," Do-hyun said carefully. "I know." "The pathogen could be dangerous to humans too," Subin pointed out. "I know that as well." Yunji leaned forward. "The raiders might still be in the area." "Also possible." Park agreed. The officers exchanged glances. Finally, Engineer Minji spoke up. "So why are we doing this, Captain?" Park played the message once more. The frightened voice of Ilara filled the room. "Because that's a child," she said simply, "and no one else is going to help." One by one, her officers nodded. No one spoke. Against the decision again. "Plot a course for the Zalathian outpost," Park ordered. "Maximum speed." As the horizon changed direction, and its engines rumbled to life, the captain recorded her own message back to Earth Command. "This is Captain Jiwoo Park of the exploratory vessel Horizon. We have received a distress signal from a Zalathian child, sole survivor of what appears to be a pathogen attack. All other species have ignored this call. I cannot in good conscience do the same. We are proceeding to offer assistance. I take full responsibility for this decision." She ended the transmission and looked out at the stars streaking past her window. Somewhere out there a child waited, not knowing if anyone had heard her cry for help. Not knowing that, of all the advanced civilizations in the galaxy, only humans had chosen to answer. The horizon emerged from light speed with a gentle shudder. 4 days of tense travel had brought Captain Jiwoo Park and her crew to the edge of the Andromeda sector. Through the main view screen, they could see the small research outpost, a cluster of silver domes on an asteroid's surface, but they weren't alone. "Captain, we have multiple vessels surrounding the outpost," reported Navigation Officer Junho, his fingers moving quickly across his control panel. 7 ships. They appear to be Conclave enforcement vessels." Captain Park frowned. "The Galactic Conclave, an alliance of the most powerful civilizations, rarely deployed this many ships for anything less than a major crisis. They've spotted us," said Security Chief Yunji. "Incoming transmission." The screen flickered, revealing the stern face of a tall, gray-skinned alien with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, a high enforcer of the Conclave. "Human vessel," the enforcer spoke in the common galactic language. "You have entered a quarantine zone. Turn back immediately." Captain Park stepped forward. "This is Captain Jiwoo Park of the Earth vessel Horizon. We received a distress call from a survivor on that outpost." "We are aware of the Zalathian child," the enforcer replied coldly. "The quarantine applies to all beings. No entry, no exit. This sector is under Directive 7. Park had studied enough galactic law to know what that meant. Directive 7. Complete isolation of a contaminated area until the threat was naturally eliminated. "We request permission to rescue the child," Park insisted. "Our ship has advanced medical facilities." The enforcer's upper eyes narrowed. "Request denied. The pathogen is highly contagious and fatal to 98% of known species. That is why all civilizations have respected the quarantine. We suggest you do the same." The transmission ended abruptly. First Officer Do-hyun turned to Park. "Captain, perhaps we should reconsider. If the Conclave has declared Directive 7, call a meeting in medical," Park said firmly. "Let's see what Dr. Kim has to say." In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Minho Kim was already studying the data. They had managed to scan from the outpost. A thin man with careful hands and thoughtful eyes, he had been analyzing the pathogen since they entered the system. "It's fascinating," he told the gathered officers, pointing to the screen showing microscopic images. "The pathogen attacks neural pathways in most species, causing rapid degradation of brain tissue. But look at these simulations when exposed to human tissue samples." The officers watched as the simulation showed the pathogen attempting to bind with human cells, only to slide off without effect. "Something in our immune system naturally resists it," Dr. Kim explained. "It might be related to our unique brain chemistry, or possibly something as simple as our body temperature." "Are you saying humans are immune?" asked Engineer Minji. "Not with complete certainty," Dr. Kim cautioned, "but based on these simulations, we appear to have around a 95% resistance rate. The pathogen simply can't get a foothold in our nervous system." Captain Park considered this information. "So if we were to attempt a rescue, we would still need protective suits as a precaution," Dr. Kim advised. "But our natural resistance gives us an advantage no other species has." Just then, Communications Officer Jimin interrupted. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission. From the Conclave. They're demanding we leave the sector within 1 hour or face sanctions." The senior officers gathered around the table looked at each other with uncertainty. What exactly are natural selection events? Asked Junho. Dr. Kim sighed. It's a conclave term for situations where they believe intervention would interfere with evolutionary processes. They see disease outbreaks as nature's way of determining which species survive. That's cold, Yunji muttered. Yunji. It's their policy, Do-hyun said. They've maintained it for centuries. To them, saving one child isn't worth risking a pandemic that could wipe out multiple civilizations. Captain Park stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the distant outpost and the conclave ships, forming a perfect blockade around it. What do we know about the child, Ilara? She asked. Dr. Kim pulled up what little information they had. Based on Zalathian biology, probably equivalent to an 8-year-old human. She's been alone for at least 6 days. The outpost has emergency food supplies, but 6 days alone, surrounded by death, Park said quietly. No child should endure that. She turned back to her crew. I know what the conclave says, I know what our orders were, but we came here to help, and that hasn't changed. The blockade has 7 ships, Yunji pointed out. We can't fight our way through. No, Park agreed, but maybe we don't have to. Dr. Kim, how small a team could successfully extract the child? 3 people, minimum, he answered. 1 medical, 1 security, 1 technical. Engineer Jae-hyun, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Captain, the shuttle's exhaust signature can be modified to match radiation patterns from the asteroid. It might slip through their sensors. For the next hour, the senior officers debated. The risks were enormous, not just to their careers, but potentially to Earth itself if the conclave imposed sanctions. Yet every time someone suggested retreat, the recording of Ilara's frightened voice seemed to hang in the air between them. Finally, Captain Park called for a decision. I won't order anyone to participate in this rescue, she said clearly. The consequences could be severe. I will take full responsibility for whatever happens, but each of you must decide for yourselves. One by one, they voiced their choice. Not everyone agreed with the mission, but all respected the captain's decision. In the end, a volunteer team formed, Dr. Kim for medical expertise, Security Chief Yunji for protection, and Engineer Jae-hyun for technical support. As they prepared the shuttle and modified their protective suits, the conclave ships broadcasted another warning. The enforcer's voice was colder than before. Human vessel, your time has expired. Depart immediately or we will take action. Captain Park watched from the bridge as the small shuttle was readied in the launch bay. Send our response, she told Communications Officer Jimin. Tell them we understand their position, but we've made our decision. Where they see a natural selection event, we see a child who needs help. That's the difference between us. She turned to watch as the shuttle's engines powered up, ready to slip through the blockade to the quarantined world where a single, frightened child had waited almost a week for someone, anyone, to answer. Her call. The small shuttle slipped away from the horizon, its engines modified to blend with the asteroid's radiation patterns. Inside, 3 figures in bulky protective suits checked their equipment one last time. Lieutenant Commander Hyun Lee, a veteran of 5 deep space missions, led the team. His calm voice steadied the others as they approached the quarantine station. Remember, we move quickly and quietly, Hyun said. Dr. Kim, you focus on finding the child and assessing her condition. Engineer Somin, you handle doors and systems. I'll take point and watch for trouble. They docked at an emergency airlock on the station's far side, away from the conclave ship's main sensors. Engineer Somin Kang, her nimble fingers working through thick gloves, bypassed the security system. The airlock hissed open. Air quality reads as safe for our suits, Dr. Kim reported, studying his scanner. The pathogen appears to be contained. In fluid residue, not airborne. Still no removing helmets under any circumstances. They stepped inside, flashlights cutting through the dim emergency lighting. The station was eerily silent. The main power had failed days ago, leaving only backup systems running. Look at this architecture, Somin whispered as they moved through a large chamber. The walls curved in graceful arcs, covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of light. Zalathian design merges art and function. These patterns actually help regulate temperature. They passed a laboratory where glass containers lay shattered on the floor. Dark stains spread across workstations. "This is where it happened," Dr. Kim said, scanning the area. "The raiders broke the containment units here. The pathogen spread within minutes. In the living quarters, they found more signs of the tragedy. Meals left half-eaten, personal items scattered as if people had collapsed suddenly. And worse, forms, lying still under sheets that the team chose not to disturb. No sign of the child yet," Hyun noted, checking his life sign detector. "The signal's weak, but I'm picking up something 3 levels down. They found the access tunnel blocked by collapsed ceiling panels." Somin examined the obstacle and pointed to a narrow ventilation shaft. "That should connect to the lower levels. It's tight, but we can make it." One by one, they squeezed through the shaft, their suits scraping against the metal walls. The passage ended at a small maintenance room filled with tools and spare parts. Hyun's detector beeped more strongly. "Close now, very close." Dr. Kim called out gently, "Ilara, are you here? We came to help you." At first, nothing happened. Then a small panel in the wall slid aside, revealing a pair of large purple eyes in a blue face. The Zalathian child looked at them with terror and hope mixed in equal measure. "You came?" Her voice was hoarse from disuse. "Yes," Dr. Kim said, kneeling to appear less threatening. "We heard your message. We're here to take you somewhere safe." Ilara emerged fully from her hiding place. She was small, no taller than a human child of 8, with delicate blue skin and 4-fingered hands. Around her neck hung a breathing filter she had fashioned from station equipment. At her feet lay a collection of water containers and food. "Packets, smart girl," Somin said admiringly. "You made your own safety gear." Ilara nodded. "I watched the bad people. They wore masks. I made one too." Dr. Kim ran a scanner over her. "You're dehydrated, but otherwise healthy. The filter was a brilliant idea. It protected you from direct contact with the pathogen." "Others coming?" she asked. "Just us," Hyun replied, helping her gather the few possessions she wanted to keep, a data crystal and a small carved figure. "But our ship is waiting. We need to move quickly." They retraced their steps, Ilara now cradled in Dr. Kim's arms, her own small protective suit, hastily assembled from spare materials they'd brought, covered her completely. As they approached the airlock where they docked, Somin's scanner beeped a warning. "Movement outside our shuttle," she whispered. "Conclave, patrol." They must have detected something. Through the small viewport, they could see 2 Conclave officers in full containment gear examining their shuttle. "They're going to find us," Dr. Kim said. Hyun considered their options. "Is there another way out?" Somin studied the station schematics on her device. The main docking bay is 2 sections over, but it would be watched even more closely. Ilara tugged at Somin's sleeve. "Emergency pods," she said softly. "For evacuation. Level 1. "Of course," Somin said. "The escape pods would have their own launch systems." They changed direction, moving upward through the station. As they reached Level 1, an alarm suddenly blared through the corridors. "They've found our entry point," Hyun said. "They'll lock down the entire station." They ran now, no longer worried about stealth. The escape pod bay was just ahead, a room lined with small single-use vessels designed for emergencies. But as they reached the entrance, the doors began to close automatically, part of the lockdown sequence. "No!" Somin rushed forward, wedging her toolkit in the door track. It bought them seconds, enough to slip through before the doors sealed shut. Inside, most of the escape pods were still in their bays. Somin ran to the control panel. "They're shutting down the launch system remotely," she said, fingers flying across the controls. "I need to override it." Outside, they could hear the heavy footsteps of Conclave security forces approaching. "How long?" Hyun asked, positioning himself by the door with his stun weapon ready. 2 minutes, maybe less. Dr. Kim kept Ilara close, whispering reassurances as the child trembled. Somin suddenly smiled. "Wait, I have a better idea." She accessed a different control panel. The station's waste disposal system uses electromagnetic pulses to compress material. "If I redirect that energy..." A deep hum built up around them. The lights flickered. "Everyone into Pod 3, Somin ordered. "Now!" They crowded into the small escape vessel as the hum grew louder. the door sealed behind them. Through the viewport, they watched as a massive pulse of energy surged through the station's systems. Every light went out. The locks on all the remaining escape pods released simultaneously. "I've triggered a complete power surge," Samin explained. "Every pod is now on automatic launch sequence." With a jolt, their pod, and 11 empty ones, blasted away from the station in different directions. Ilara gasped, then laughed in surprise at Somin's trick. But their celebration was short-lived. As they cleared the asteroid's shadow, they saw conclave vessels already moving to intercept the scattered pods. "They don't know which one we're in," Hyun said, "but they're going to check them all." A beam of light swept over their pod as a conclave ship drew closer. "They've spotted us," Dr. Kim said grimly. Ilara pressed her face against the viewport, watching as the conclave vessel grew larger. Her small hand found Dr. Kim's and squeezed tightly. "Captain Park, if you can hear us," Hyun transmitted on their emergency frequency, "we have the child, but we need extraction, urgently." The conclave ship loomed over them, its tractor beam powering up to capture the tiny escape pod and the fugitives inside. The Horizon's engines roared to full power as Captain Park made her decision. The small escape pod containing her crew and the Zalathian child was seconds away from being captured by a conclave vessel. "Lock tractor beam on the escape pod," she ordered. "All shields up. Prepare for emergency retrieval." The Horizon dove forward, slipping between two conclave ships with surprising agility for its size. Before the alien vessels could react, the human ship had locked its own tractor beam onto the tiny pod, pulling it safely into its docking bay. "We have them, Captain," First Officer Do-Yun reported. "All 3 crew members and the child are aboard." Park barely had time to feel relief before the ship rocked violently. The conclave vessels had opened fire, not with their main weapons, but with disabling pulses designed to shut down the Horizon's systems. "They're trying to trap us, not destroy us," Navigation Officer Junho explained as another pulse hit. "They want us to stand trial." Captain Park knew they couldn't outrun the entire conclave fleet. With a heavy sigh, she gave the order to power down weapons. "Open a communication channel," she said. "Tell them we surrender to their authority, but we will not give up the child." Within hours, the Horizon was escorted to the nearest conclave station, a massive wheel-shaped structure that served as both diplomatic hub and military base for this sector. Captain Park was immediately summoned to face a tribunal of representatives from the major galactic powers. The tribunal chamber was designed to intimidate. 7 alien judges sat on elevated platforms, looking down at Park, who stood alone on a circular platform. Holographic barriers separated her from the rest of the room, where observers from dozens of species watched with interest. Captain Jiwoo Park of Earth, the chief judge, a tall, crystalline being, spoke. "You stand accused of violating Conclave Directive 7, interfering with quarantine protocols, and endangering multiple civilizations through your reckless actions." Park stood straight, her uniform crisp despite the chaos of recent events. "I acknowledge that we breached the quarantine," she said, "but we did so to save a child who had been abandoned by every other species in this galaxy." Murmurs rippled through the audience. "Your rescue mission has potentially exposed your own species and others to a deadly pathogen," a reptilian judge hissed. "One life is not worth such risk." "Every life is worth the risk," Park replied firmly. "That is the principle upon which my civilization stands." Meanwhile, aboard the Horizon, now docked at the station under heavy guard, Dr. Kim and his medical team worked frantically. Ilara sat on an examination table, watching with curious eyes as they studied samples of her blood. "It's remarkable," Dr. Kim told his colleagues. "Her body has produced antibodies against the pathogen. She's not just surviving, she's fighting it off." "Is that why she didn't get sick like the others?" asked one of the medical staff. Dr. Kim nodded. "She must have a naturally stronger immune system than most Zalathians, combined with her makeshift filter and hiding place away from the main contamination zones. It was enough to keep her alive." His console beeped with an incoming transmission. To everyone's surprise, it was from the Zalathian High Council, the ruling body of Ilara's species, based on their distant homeworld. An elderly Zalathian appeared on screen, his blue skin faded to pale azure with age. This is Elder Toll of the Zalathian High Council. We have just learned that a child of our people survived the outpost tragedy. Is this true? Dr. Kim confirmed it was, explaining Ilara's condition. The elder's four-fingered hand trembled as he pressed it against his chest in what appeared to be a gesture of profound emotion. We had no knowledge of this. The conclave informed us that all personnel at the outpost were lost. His large eyes blinked rapidly. We must speak with the child immediately. When Ilara saw her people's elder on the screen, she performed a formal greeting that seemed beyond her years. The elder responded with gentle words in their native language that made tears stream down her blue cheeks. After their conversation, Dr. Kim received urgent orders to bring his findings to the tribunal. With Ilara's permission, he gathered the medical data and rushed to the chamber where Captain Park was still defending human actions before increasingly hostile judges. The humans must surrender the child for quarantine procedures, the crystalline judge was saying as Dr. Kim entered. Our protocols are clear. Your protocols would have left her to die, Park countered. Dr. Kim approached the platform where Park stood. After being granted permission to speak, he projected his findings for all to see. Ilara has developed antibodies against the pathogen, he explained to the tribunal. More importantly, our tests show that human biology naturally resists this pathogen due to a unique protein structure in our nervous system. He showed comparative scans of how the pathogen affected different species. By combining Ilara's antibodies with human biological markers, we believe we can develop a treatment, possibly even a cure. The judges conferred among themselves, clearly surprised by this development. As they deliberated, another commotion arose at the chamber entrance. Elder Toll of the Zalathian High Council had arrived in person, accompanied by several officials. We demand to be heard in this matter, the elder announced. The child Ilara represents the last survivor of a research team that included some of our finest scientists, including her parents. We were told no one survived. The crystalline judge seemed uncomfortable. The conclave determined that notification would serve no purpose, as rescue was impossible under Directive 7. So you decided for us? Elder Toll's voice carried centuries of diplomatic experience, yet couldn't disguise his anger. You deemed one Zalathian child not worth saving. The atmosphere in the chamber shifted. Other representatives began whispering among themselves. Several species that had remained neutral now seemed troubled by the conclave's actions. Captain Park seized the moment. The conclave speaks of protecting civilizations, yet it abandoned a child. We humans chose differently. And now, because of that choice, we may have found a way to neutralize this pathogen instead of simply quarantining it. Dr. Kim nodded. With cooperation between human and Zalathian medical experts, we could develop a treatment within weeks. The tribunal called for a recess. As the judges withdrew to consider this new information, Elder Toll approached Captain Park and Dr. Kim. For centuries, we Zalathians have considered humans an impulsive, emotional species, he said quietly. Today, I am grateful for those very qualities. You risked everything for one of our children when logical calculation said it wasn't worth it. Back in the medical bay, Ilara watched as human scientists and newly arrived Zalathian medical experts began working side by side. She didn't understand all the complex biology, but she recognized something important was happening because of her. Your blood is special, a kind-faced Zalathian doctor explained to her. Together with human science, it might help make sure no one else gets sick like your parents did. Ilara looked at the humans who had saved her when no one else would. Then at her own people who had traveled across the galaxy once they learned she was alive. I thought no one was coming, she said softly. But the humans came. They were not afraid. 3 weeks after the dramatic rescue, the Conclave space station hummed with unusual activity. The central laboratory, normally reserved for the most prestigious alien scientists, now hosted a mixed team of humans and Zalathians working side by side. Captain Park watched from an observation platform as Dr. Kim led the research efforts. Below, the Conclave representatives still look uncomfortable, First Officer Do-hyun noted, nodding toward the 4 alien monitors who observed every step of the process. They'll get used to us, Park replied with a small smile. They don't have much choice now. The tribunal's final decision had been a careful compromise. The humans would not face punishment for their breach of quarantine, but neither would they be allowed to leave until they proved their claims about a possible cure. The Zalathian High Council had thrown their considerable diplomatic weight behind the humans, insisting on the right to collaborate on saving their people from future outbreaks. In the laboratory, Dr. Kim carefully mixed a blue-tinted solution, while his Zalathian counterpart, Dr. Nal, adjusted settings on equipment more advanced than anything humans had developed. The synthesis is holding stable, Dr. Kim reported, studying the readings. The human protein structures are bonding with Ilara's antibodies. Dr. Nal nodded, her blue fingers moving gracefully across the control panel. The adaptive algorithms suggest 94% effectiveness, far beyond our expectations. Ilara sat nearby watching the scientists with bright, curious eyes. Though still recovering from her ordeal, she had insisted on being present for the final stages of development. A distant cousin, her closest surviving relative, sat beside her, having traveled across the galaxy to claim guardianship of the child. "Will it really work?" Ilara asked, her voice stronger now after weeks of proper care. Dr. Kim smiled at her. "Yes. Your special blood combined with human biology is creating something neither of our species could have developed alone." That evening, as the final batch of the treatment was prepared for testing, representatives from 12 major galactic powers gathered in the station's Grand Assembly Hall. What had begun as a tribunal had transformed into something unprecedented, a showcase of interspecies cooperation. The crystalline chief judge, now acting as moderator rather than prosecutor, addressed the gathering. "We have verified the human Zalathian team's findings. The treatment shows remarkable effectiveness against the pathogen that devastated Outpost 7 Delta. This development challenges certain long-held conclave policies." Captain Park stood before the assembly in her formal uniform. "The success of this treatment proves that cooperation is sometimes better than isolation. When we received Ilara's distress call, we didn't calculate risks and benefits. We simply knew a child needed help." Elder Toll of the Zalathian Council stepped forward to stand beside her. "For centuries, my people have observed humans from a distance. We saw them as impulsive, emotional, and sometimes dangerous. Today, we recognize that those very qualities led them to save our child when logical minds chose to abandon her." Murmurs spread through the assembly as various species discussed this perspective among themselves. A reptilian diplomat rose to speak. "The humans violated our quarantine protocols. This cannot be disputed." "True," Elder Toll acknowledged. "And in doing so, they discovered a cure rather than merely containing the problem. Perhaps some of our protocols deserve reconsideration." 3 days later, as the Horizon prepared to depart, a small ceremony took place in the station's diplomatic sector. Captain Park and her crew stood in a semicircle as Ilara approached with her guardian cousin and Elder Toll. Ilara had changed in the month since her rescue. The terrified child they had found hiding in a maintenance shaft now stood tall, her purple eyes clear and confident. She wore traditional Zalathian robes with one addition, a small earth emblem pinned above her heart. "I want to thank you," she said simply, looking at each human face. "You came when no one else would." Captain Park knelt to be at eye level with the child. "We couldn't leave you there. It's not who we are." Elder Toll presented Captain Park with an ornate crystal tablet. This contains the formal agreement for the establishment of the first joint human Zalathian Medical Research Center. Your government has already approved the preliminary plans. And this, he continued, presenting a second document, is something even more significant. The Conclave Council has voted to adopt new protocols for crisis response. They are calling it the Human Response Doctrine. Dr. Kim looked surprised. "They named it after us?" "Yes," Elder Toll replied. "It mandates that rescue operations must be attempted even in quarantine situations if sentient lives can be saved. The doctrine specifically acknowledges that compassion should be factored into crisis decisions, a concept many species found foreign until now." As the humans prepared to board their ship, news of the breakthrough treatment and the new doctrine was already spreading throughout the galaxy. On 100 worlds, species that had dismissed humans as primitive were reassessing their view of Earth and its people. Back on the horizon, the crew gathered on the bridge for departure. First Officer Do-hyun had received word that rather than facing court-martial upon their return, Captain Park was being considered for a diplomatic position. It seems our impulsive rescue mission is now being called a strategic diplomatic breakthrough, Do-hyun said with a rare smile. Park shook her head. We didn't do it for diplomacy. We did it because it was right. Through the view screen, they could see Ilara standing with her people at the observation deck, her small hand raised in farewell. The child who had sent a desperate plea into the darkness had changed the course of galactic relations. Prepare for departure, Captain Park ordered, returning Ilara's wave. As the horizon pulled away from the station, Communications Officer Jimin looked up from his console. Captain, we're receiving messages from 17 different species requesting diplomatic talks with Earth. 3 of them have never communicated with humans before. Captain Park nodded, watching as stars streaked past the viewport. It seems the galaxy is learning something we've known all along, she said quietly. Sometimes the most logical choice isn't the right one. Sometimes you have to listen to your heart. On the station, Ilara watched the human ship disappear into the distance. She clutched the small Earth emblem on her robe and made a silent promise to herself. Someday, she would visit the world of these strange, emotional beings who had answered her call when everyone else had turned away. Someday she would help bridge the gap between her people and humans, bringing together the best of both worlds. Across the stars, the message was spreading, a new doctrine born from one simple truth, that humans had known all along. No one gets left behind. The end.